everybody. Oh, it's been a while since I've been on a stage. So I'm going to talk to you about the how factor. And I often think that marketing and HR are very similar with their aims. Marketing try to engage people from the outside in, and we try to engage people from the inside. And there was this really pivotal moment for marketing in the noughties. And I remember sitting in a boardroom and they came in and they were like, we're advertising in newspapers, billboards, TV. But the consumer behavior has changed. And we need to start advertising in online, social media apps. We need digital tools, analytics tools to help us understand consumer behavior even more. And it was a tough call because most of the leaders, A, weren't on these social media apps and didn't understand them, and B, marketing were looking for double the budget. But marketing persisted because they knew the behaviors had changed. And of course, now that you know, going onto your social media apps, they certainly won the war on that one. But here's the really interesting thing. This was a pivotal moment for them, and this is our pivotal moment for us, because the employee behaviors have changed as well. And not just because of hybrid or remote working, but because societal shifts, Me Too, diversity, Black Lives Matter, the focus on the work-life balance that we haven't had before. And of course, one of the symptoms is the Great Resignation. But what's interesting about this talent war versus other talent wars, people aren't even waiting till they have their next job. They're literally leaving with confidence, knowing that they're going to find the right next job for them. They're just not happy where they are. And that's kind of that's a really new mindset and a shift in behaviors that we haven't seen before. So it begs us to think about maybe we need to change the way that we manage people. If these new behaviors are around, then perhaps we also need to start thinking about the experience and the performance management experience in particular. And the reason why we want to talk about that is because effectively, if people are being given feedback, checked in, know their goals, and so on, this is a pivotal part of their ongoing experience. And if you think about the evolution of performance management, an awful lot of the assumptions and the theories we use in performance management today were actually built in the 80s, a time when the world of work was very different. And in the last 2 years, we've seen the rise of continuous performance management. And it's brought a lot more frequency, so more frequent real-time feedback, more check-ins, more frequent performance reviews. But have we done enough by just making it more frequent, or do we need to rethink some of it altogether? Well, one of the really interesting research areas is how bias threads through the performance management experience. So even if you've been that great employer who brought in real-time crowdsourced feedback practices, they don't land the same for everybody. Women are 20% less likely to receive growth-oriented or actionable feedback. And when they do receive feedback, it tends to be either praise or personality trait-driven. So not exactly helping us develop. On development goals, there's been studies to show that women will be less ambitious with some of their claims toward leadership roles. But it gets really scary when you start to look at areas like self-evaluation, because in self-evaluation, women will be more modest with their performance contributions. And studies have shown that even when you present evidence to those women to show them that your performance was actually higher than everybody else on their team, they'll still give a more modest self-evaluation, despite the fact that the evidence is in front of them that they were the highest on the team. And when we have people walking into reviews, the manager may have brought in some crowdsourced feedback from peers or stakeholders that woman has worked with, or indeed that anyone has, but that's one-sided. The employee is walking in with no data or no evidence to talk about them except their self-evaluation, which we now know was probably biased. And of course, that triggers the manager to think, well, if they just think they're okay, then maybe they are just okay. And suddenly we're into a skewed rating scale. And when we have a skewed rating scale, we more than likely have a skewed compensation outcome. And then we're into our gender pay gap challenges. And here's the thing, 16% of employees are more likely to leave their organization rather than have a conversation about pay with their managers. They'd rather leave. So what do we do with it all? Well, in Tandem, we're big believers in what we call the how factor. And the how factor comes from two different perspectives. The first one is, when you think about great performance, we often talk about behaviors in the end. You know, when you talk about the project's success was based on how collaborative the team was, or the client, the customer agent who showed great empathy and won the client back over. So we're often pointing to behaviors as being the tipping point of great performance, but we're not very good at measuring or evaluating behaviors, and we don't always have a great language to discuss them. And while lots of people have put values into their performance management frameworks, because we're not talking about them in a normalized way in our everyday feedback check-in practices, it's become a very difficult conversation to have. We haven't made it easy to talk about behaviors. And yet we're very quick to talk about goals. You know, we're really obsessed with our OKRs or SMART or Agile, and we're really quick to kind of go through what's right for goals, but we shy away a little bit more from behaviors. And I think that's one of the real areas that we can even up the balance, because if we get talking about them and if people understand their behaviors and how their behaviors are coming across, they can then shape them. And we can use more tools now to help that come to life as well. So in the past, things like 360 was for the elite, for top leadership or high potentials, but now it can be democratized for everybody with technology. And if you think about people understanding, here's how my behaviors are coming across, then I understand my personal brand in this organization. And once I understand my personal brand, I can influence it. So we need to get better at helping them become more self-aware. The other perspective of the how factor is our managers and how they're executing on these different elements of performance, whether it's feedback, check-ins, and so on. And a lot of our managers are overwhelmed and they're running into these activities without even stopping to think about what am I here to do and what kind of conversation am I going to have. So they can often resort to just the work rather than the human behind the worker. So again, if we want to go from the overwhelmed manager to, any Ted Lasso fans out there? To the coach, I'm obsessed, to the great coach, then we've got to think about how are we helping them become great coaches. And I used to be guilty of sheep dipping managers through coaching programs all the time, but it only had short-lived impacts. We have to catch them before they give that feedback, before they walk into the check-in. Quick flash up of the tips going, here's how to have a great conversation. We've got to help them navigate quality conversations. So CPM has evolved, and what we're seeing now is we're moving from continuous check-ins to navigated quality conversations. So HR getting very specific about what we want you talking about in these conversations. We're moving along from crowdsourced feedback into employee-owned development. So if you don't get that feedback, how can you come and drive your own development regardless? And helping managers to be less of a passive passenger on the journey of performance and to really own and drive it. We see goals moving more agile, more team-oriented, and we see people bringing lots more objective data into the review itself. Performance evaluation has moved to what David Ulrich likes to term positive performance accountability, which is this lovely concept that the old days of rating people are probably gone. But we still need to hold people to account. So we still need to help them understand where they stand or if they're off track, but we can do it in a positive way. And ultimately, the process has moved on to becoming much more of an experience, where the employee understands their purpose. They know they're not just a cog in the wheel. They can drive their own development. They feel part of something bigger than just them, so they're part of a team. They can see the team goals, but they understand their accountability within it. And they also have an understanding of their personal brand. And look, they're human. They want to get appreciated. We all do. So they're valued for doing a great role, but they're also given the steer when they're a little off track. So to sum up, cultures can be shaped and coaches can be made. And people can really be successful when they know how. And technology is a great answer to helping us move the debate on, move performance into the how factor. We're Tandem, we're in the stands outside. We'd love to continue the conversation with you all. Thanks for listening.